the NFL draft analyst for Bleacher Report, Matt Miller, on the program. How are you, Matt?
Doing well, Rich. And yeah, already in Indy.
Okay.
Ready to go, man. It's a crazy week.
Okay. Are you already seeing people out and about? Have you seen the Cowboys bus in the city yet? Have you seen that?
Not yet. I think they cruise in a little bit later than the rest of us. If I'm going to see it, it'll be at like 3 o'clock in the morning, like tonight. Because you don't see that during the day. It's like a vampire.
All you got to do is just see Glazer sticking his head out the window waving at people. Just look for Glaze.
I don't know how to get a ticket on that bus. One of these days, I'll make it to that point.
Keep going, Matt. Keep going. Bleacher Report, as we know, only gets bigger and better. We know that. So where do you have the? I know because I've seen your list, but I will ask it for folks who might be curious just about these two players, because you have come up with your top 50 as well as the top 15 players at each position. The Haskins-Murray equation. How do you have it equaling out?
Tied right now, honestly. And I know people are like, you've been watching these guys for 9 months. How can you have them tied? But I do it because I heard you talking about it on the intro. Until December, when he won the Heisman Trophy, everyone told me at Oklahoma and the Big 12 agents, don't worry about Kyler Murray. Don't waste time evaluating him when you have 400 other guys to watch. He's playing baseball. So I just enjoyed watching him as a fan of college football and didn't break down any of the tape. And then there was this try to hurry up and get him into the mix and get the game footage to watch. And I'm really intrigued by him. He breaks every mold that I've ever seen or set for quarterback evaluation. He's going to come in, even if it's just a hair under 5'10", he's going to be under 5'10". I'm curious to see how big his hands are. People like to point to Russell Wilson as a comp for him, but Russell Wilson had 10.5-inch hands, which is like the size of a 6'5" or 6'6" person, not a guy who's 5'10". With Dwayne Haskins, I love the things we saw from him the last 3 weeks of the season. He had a run against Michigan, Northwestern, and Washington to end the year against 3 very good defenses, and he played his best football of the year in those big moments and against good defenses. So I love the way that the season ended with him. We haven't seen either guy throw really since then, though, because they weren't Senior Bowl eligible. We haven't seen, behind-the-looks things of what they're doing. So whether or not we see Kyler Murray, I doubt we see him do anything here. But I think this is an event where Dwayne Haskins can come out and solidify his stock as maybe the top-ranked quarterback in this draft, because he does plan to throw and work out and go through the process here.
You don't think Kyler Murray's throwing on Saturday?
I don't. You know more than I do about that, probably, but it doesn't.
That would be
like
surprise.
I'll
tell you. Matt, I'll tell you right now. That would be a surprise to the NFL Network. I'll tell you that. That'd be news.
I hope he does.
Well, of course. I mean, look, I'm biased because I've been part of a broadcast that only thankfully gets bigger and better every year with the hard work and crew that puts together the entire production. It makes no sense to not throw. I mean, it just get out there and throw. And the whole business of you don't know who you're throwing to, it doesn't matter. Scouts aren't there saying, well, that ball was high, that ball. You just want to see the guy have the ball in his hands, step back, see the footwork. That's what matters. And then just see how fast the ball jumps out of his hand. When that's all everyone last year was talking about was Baker Mayfield, how the ball flew out of his hands and how the ball arrived with such zip. It kind of surprised a lot of people in person. And I would love to see Kyler Murray do all of that. That said, in my estimation, what's the most important thing, in having been around the combine as ever, is the eye in the sky for the tape, and then the interview process when a team looks at somebody and hears them talk about football and how smart they are on the grease board. That said, we're going to be talking about the measurements all day long. What's more important to you, Matt? Hand size or height?
I think hand size, because we've seen height break down, and you just mentioned Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees. Those guys they're under 6'2", which when I started this job 8 years ago, that was the threshold. You had to be 6'2". We've seen that change, and I think you can be creative enough to get a guy moving around to find passing windows. If you have small hands, I think not only do you have fumble concerns, but I've talked to guys before. I actually had this conversation with Russ at his combine, was that he was able to put so much velocity on the ball because he had big hands. And I know there are guys like Baker and Pat Mahomes who don't have the largest hands in the world, but they're both over that 9-inch threshold. So with Kyler Murray, one thing that I would want to go back and see, and I have the numbers in front of me, he didn't fumble a whole lot, but how many hard hits did he take behind a defensive line an offensive line that will have 4 players drafted. His left tackle, left guard, and right tackle will be drafted. So how many hits did he take where you would think, look at that and see, that type of hit could create a fumble in the NFL? Marcus Mariota is someone that stood out as not having very big hands, having fumbling problems in college. Now he has those same issues in the NFL. So when I look at it, I feel like with height, we can make a guy move around enough to find those passing windows, to make creative plays. And Kyler Murray is such a great athlete. He's going to be able to do that. But when it comes to hand size, if you're going to have trouble holding on to the ball, we'll probably see him get the Jared Goff treatment, the squirting the water bottle on the ball when it comes to pro day workouts and private workouts, because that is going to be a question mark for him.
Matt Miller, Bleacher Report here on the Rich Eisen Show. And in each of one of the position groups in your Bleacher Report posting, you also have, other than just 1 through 15 on your board, biggest riser and biggest faller. You've got in the quarterback position, Drew Lock of Missouri is the biggest riser, and Will Grier of West Virginia is the biggest faller. Why?
Watching those two guys together at the Senior Bowl, you don't want to look at the Senior Bowl and learn everything from there, but you want to take some notes away from there. Will Grier just did not look like he had the arm talent or the accuracy. He was very inconsistent, which matches up with what we saw the last couple of years at West Virginia. And when you've played in that Dana Holgorsen scheme, I think as an evaluator, you have concerns about his ability to hit passes, on time in tight windows where you can really have to throw your guy open. He didn't do that well in Mobile. I thought Drew Lock, on the other hand, was the most impressive quarterback of the 8 that we saw there. Very strong arm, very athletic. He has it in his head that he's the next Patrick Mahomes, and I wish he would stop doing the no-look passes in practice. But he has some traits and some gifts that are really special. I think it'll be a lot like Josh Allen last year, where maybe the tape wasn't great and the guy's below 60% completion percentage, but the arm talent, the athleticism, and the character are good enough that you would bet a top 10 pick on him, whether you're the Denver Broncos or someone else. It does really feel like Drew Lock's going to be an early pick.
And I was watching so much of the bowl games, as we all do, and I watched Benny Snell for Kentucky just absolutely dominate Penn State. And you have him as your biggest faller in your running backs group to the point where I don't even see him in your top 15. What's that all about?
Yeah, it was hard this year with the running back position because there are so many good ones. So I apologize to Benny Snell. I just couldn't get him in the top 15. When I watched him, I saw like a powerful runner, but someone who can be a bit frenetic at times. He doesn't see the hole and always explode through it. It's not always a smooth transition for him. Too often it's, he just runs violent into his offensive line. He can be impatient. So I liked his game, and you're right. He was one of the most productive players in the SEC last year and in the entire nation. But I looked at him as like a guy who's an NFL backup unless he gets in just the perfect system where it can be a great fit for what he does as an inside-outside runner. But, the limitations in terms of, he doesn't catch the ball very well, hasn't shown a lot of aptitude as a pass blocker, and that's where the league's going. Even if you're Todd Gurley or Saquon Barkley, you're going to be expected to block, and you're going to be expected to catch the ball coming out of the backfield, and that's probably his weakest aspect right now. I'll be curious to see how fast he actually runs here, too.
Okay. And Nick Bosa is your undisputed number 1 player, correct?
Yeah, that was easy. I had someone tell me years back that the great players are easy to scout, and that's Nick Bosa. I know he's been hurt, and you can have concerns about that, even with his brother has been banged up a little bit in the NFL, but what he does as an outside pass rusher is just special. He's a great athlete, and you can tell that he's taken to the coaching that he's gotten because he's very, very developed for a prospect.
Yeah, and for top edge rushers, Matt Miller of Bleacher Report, you've got Bosa as most NFL-ready, best pass rusher, and best potential. That's a heck of a triple threat right there.
Not bad,
right? I know, and I've heard
be the first pick.
And I've heard, yeah, right. So there's no chance Arizona passes up on him. Correct? There's no chance.
I've learned to never say never, right? Because too many crazy things can happen. But you would think that.
Well, you're going to hear, Matt. I mean, as you know, Murray's going to, I think, look good at the combine, which means he's only going to look even better at his pro day, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger for him. And then the video of Cliff Kingsbury saying what he's going to say is going to be what he said, prior to playing Oklahoma as Texas Tech's guy. And he could have been doing the typical Lou Holtz talking up Rice, but that's no Rice that he was playing. and that's going to be how we fill some of the time. Certainly, if this draft is going to be all about tackles and edge rushers, which isn't the sexiest thing, to be very honest.
Yeah, the best thing that happens to guys like ourselves who make money talking about the NFL draft is Kyler Murray, because this was a boring draft until he got in it. And that, like, for me, whether it's on my own podcast or when I come do radio shows with other people, that's all we've talked about for 2 months is the mystique of Kyler Murray and whether he'll go to Arizona. If you buy into what Cliff Kingsbury said, what happens to Josh Rosen? Would the Raiders trade Derek Carr? I mean, there's a million scenarios. And I think he is, honestly, Kyler Murray is the domino we're waiting to see fall. The rest of the draft is usually pretty easy to figure out in the first 5 or 6 picks, but he has made it interesting this year where it feels like teams could fall in love with the aptitude that he brings and the fact that he could be a difference maker at the position. If that's the case, then you could – I don't think it's crazy to see in Arizona or Oakland say, hey, this guy can get us somewhere that Derek Carr can't or Josh Rosen won't, so let's start over with this head coach, especially if you're Arizona. If you're going to hire Cliff Kingsbury, you got to let him run his offense. Well, I don't know if Josh Rosen's that guy.
Yeah, I mean, because last one for you on this subject, even though I know I'm playing into what you said, every single conversation you've been having is that what's really so fascinating about it isn't just because he's a Heisman Trophy winner, which we all usually do talk about. It's we're wondering, is this because if he does get drafted top 5, top 10, does get out there, then the transformation of the National Football League offensive schemes from the 20th to the 21st century would be complete. And then we're wondering just how small can you go, right? That's the idea of what makes Kyler Murray so fascinating.
Yeah, and if you're a football fan, it gives you bragging rights over Major League Baseball. They were ready to change the rules for this guy. They give him a big league contract right out of the gate, and let him have the $15 million. So he's going to be a trendsetter one way or another, and hopefully he has success in the NFL so that we can say, this guy picked our sport over baseball, and now look at all the success he's having.
Okay, Matt. Thanks very much for joining. We'll see you in Indianapolis. And like I said, if you want to get a seat on the Jones bus, I can try and arrange that for you. Let's
do it.
Well, I mean, it's like a restaurant. I think there's seatings at 7, 9, and 2 in the morning. So
I wasn't 2 in the morning. If you're going to go, you want a good story. So that's when I want to go.
All right, Matt, take care of yourself. We'll see you in India.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
You got Matt Miller, one of the best at Bleacher Report.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.